Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Short Story Long. This week, we're sitting down with Courtney and Carter Reum. They're two brothers that currently run the investment company M13, but their story is really, really good. And they did a really good job together at sort of feeding off of each other and joking with each other and telling these stories from their childhood, how they went to Columbia University, they went and got a job at Goldman Sachs, really good, obviously it's Goldman Sachs, an incredible job, and then decided to leave that to start an alcohol company. They started an alcohol company called VEEV. It did really, really well, and now they run M13 and make investments. They also are about to come out with a book next month called Shortcut Your Startup. I just finished reading it. It's really, really good, and it's all just sort of a breakdown of all the different types of ways, challenges, and lessons learned when it comes to starting a company. So anyone who's interested in founding their own company, starting their own company, or investing one day, or learning how people raise money or how that whole process goes, this is the podcast for you. These are the guys for you, and their book will be very, very helpful for you. So I'm also going to have them back on when their book drops next month. But here is the story of Courtney and Carter Reum.
The hardest part is figuring out what you want to master.
Focus on your product.
Can you tell somebody that they suck?
You gotta just go, this is exactly what I want to do for a living.
You can't even tell somebody that their breath is life.
All right, here we are. Welcome back to Short Story Long. Today, we have two brothers who are very successful, very smart. Do you guys still get along really well?
Depends on the day.
Okay, depends on the day. So good relationship, happy, smart, very successful brothers, Courtney and Carter Reum. Welcome to Short Story Long.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
I appreciate you guys making the time to come down and do this. Your office is not too far from ours, right?
Yep,
Down
right.
Wilshire a little bit?
Yep, right on the border of Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, right down the street.
Nice. It's a good neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to make sure to connect, go grab coffee, meet in the middle. I met with Andrew the other day. We went to Coffee Bean. I don't know if he told you or not.
No.
Just shot the shit and hung out.
It's
The
great.
one in that
You're
little strip
Andrew.
center.
Yeah.
You know what? Occasionally, I go for a little secret. I go for a little foot rub in that same strip center because you take your laptop, do a little work. We call it net zero time. So you're getting a foot massage while you knock
Like
out some
during the
emails.
day.
Yeah.
The best part of the office is one side's Beverly Hills, the other side's West Hollywood. So
Yeah.
if we're talking to someone really important that's kind of the Beverly Hills type, we're like, oh, let's meet in Beverly Hills at the office.
Yeah.
Then we're meeting with someone cool like you. We're like, oh, yeah, come to our office in West Hollywood.
God
It's
damn
cool,
it.
man. It's cool.
You get to play
ACDC.
both sides. Yeah, that's good. Damn it. So let's get into it, man. Where are you guys from?
Well, we were both born in Ohio, which I understand we have in common here. So this is off
Cleveland.
to a good start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Ever
But
since LeBron, we say that more proudly. Now, the story used to start,
Tell
we
me
actually
about
grew
it.
up in Chicago. Now it's like, dude, we were born in Cleveland.
100%. I'm from Akron, so I'm like LeBron all day. You know what I mean? We should have been best friends, but I blew
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I fucking blew
Could have
it.
been part of his entourage.
Yeah, damn it.
yeah, looking at the hair, though, I thought you guys might go for that same fade at that place that's always on
Yeah,
Sports
yeah,
Center.
yeah,
Them getting the
right.
trim, right?
Yeah, that Akron fade. So then you moved quickly to Chicago?
Yep, moved quickly to Chicago before I was even 3 years old, right after my brother was born.
Yep.
And
Why?
grew up in Chicago.
Parents work?
Parents work.
Yep.
Yep. Dad's job and just, bigger city, bigger opportunity.
So
There
do
was
you
no
remember
LeBron,
Cleveland?
So we had to go to Michael Jordan.
Yeah, no shit,
We had,
yeah.
we had to go for MJ.
Damn it.
It's
you're
right because I was born. Right when we moved, MJ rookie year.
That's when it was?
So, yeah.
So were you guys like huge Chicago MJ fans growing up?
Yeah, we had season tickets, as you can imagine, in the middle school and high school.
I'm so
When
jealous.
you got MJ's run, that's a pretty good time to grow up in Chicago.
Well, that's a story in and of itself. But my dad worked for a great company, but an industrial company, so not exactly consumer facing, like a B2B company.
Yeah.
And they become a corporate sponsor the year before the Bulls drafted Michael Jordan. So you can imagine, I don't know who in the marketing department probably should have been fired for,
Yes.
marketing and advertising with the Bulls when you don't sell to customers.
Yeah.
Yet those tickets probably end up being one of the better decisions that the marketing department ever made because to this day, we are still season ticket holders because of that. So we were at pretty much, not pretty much, every Bulls championship game.
Our
a
best
dream
was
come
like
true.
one of those Sports Illustrated. So we used to always wear tie-dye shirts to the games so that all our friends could see us on WGN, the Superstation, to be jealous. We were at the game, obviously, because we happened to be pretty close to the court.
Yep.
And we had some tickets right behind the scores table. So when, like, if you remember, when they won one year, MJ and Scotty jumped up on the scores table.
Yep.
Where it was the
You're
year
right
that,
in the background?
that Kerr hit the winning shot. So there's like a 2-page spread on SI. We got it obviously blowing up, put it on our walls. You know,
But we
that kind of
we
thing.
are in Sports Illustrated when that probably was cool and there was no digital media. The infamous Jordan push-off, where it's the crossover push-off Brian Russell's butt, and then go over to hit the winning shot.
You're in
and
the
there's
background
a
of that too?
2-page. We're in the background of that.
All with tie-dye shirts.
Tie-dye
Yes.
shirts, always
Or
tie-dye.
we would do stuff. We would do stuff. You know, like when Dennis Rodman was on the Bulls and he changed his hair color. I think what my brother's referring to is we would go with like different color wigs to symbolize Rodman's different hair throughout the year, stuff like that.
We were actually on OPRAH because of Dennis Rodman. We would wear the tie-dye shirts and the hair, you know, because he'd throw the jersey, and we were close enough. Kind of, we thought we had a shot. So we went with 3 buddies, and someone came up to us from like the OPRAH show and was like, "Hey, are you Dennis Rodman fans?" We're like, "Yeah, of course." Yeah. It turns out they were doing something on Monday for like meet your biggest like fan for like, you know, guy like Jeff Earnhardt was meeting a guy that had like his house painted and his number and like tattoos all over his body. So we get home that night, like after the Bulls game, because we just went 4 of us. My parents didn't go, and we're like, "Dad, like we're gonna be on the OPRAH show on Monday." He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." It's like, "No, Dad, they're gonna like send us a limo Monday morning." Sure enough, again, this was pre-cell phone. Sunday morning, OPRAH show calls. So we'd love to have your sons on the OPRAH show. Meet Dennis Rodman. We're going to send a limo. And then they had those cups from McDonald's where you put the Coke in and Dennis Rodman's hair changed colors. It was great.
And you actually did
We
it.
were actually on the OPRAH show. And the best part was
the
everyone were
fuck?
these like crazy super fans, right? Like tattoos, their house, Ed, all this stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, "Tell us about your love with Dennis Rodman." And we were
Did
just,
you just
know.
freestyle?
Yeah, we were just like, "Oh, yeah, and this and this." And I mean, not true at all. We just wanted his jersey, but
Holy
worked out. And
shit.
we were on OPRAH. So, yeah.
Damn, you guys have
You
like
haven't
a
been on
early-
OPRAH, have you?
I have not.
Oh, so
No, and
that's-
here I am.
Maybe I can. Yeah,
interviewing
no,
you, and
exactly.
yeah.
It's awkward.
This is weird. This feels like maybe I don't belong on the Beverly Hills side.
Exactly.
What? Damn it! Your guys' childhood like highlight reel is incredible. So you're telling me like in your rooms was like Sports Illustrated printouts. You obviously were on OPRAH. Like you're
No
just
big
killing
deal.
it. What age were you when you were on OPRAH?
This was all high school because I remember, you know, we went to kind of a very average middle of the road public school right outside Chicago in the suburbs, and they literally sent the limos to pick us up from school. So people were like watching against the windows because we had there was like 8 of our friends that went. It was probably 2 of us and I think 4 to 6 friends. So everyone's watching as we get into the limos. And the memory I'll never forget is actually putting down the window because they actually did have the Grey Poupon in the window, and that was like a thing in the 90s, and
you
holding
stuck
it out the window.
and
Yeah.
they're like, yeah.
We were like folk heroes.
It's literally like you can't. That's like a movie scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck. Okay. So what? Were you guys super popular in high school or no?
Me more so than Carter, I'd say.
Really?
Well, I'm 2
And you're
years.
2
I'm
years
2 years
older.
older, so I always say I'm really lucky because you know it doesn't. When you look at me, and again, I noticed you left out handsome in the intro, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a podcast, so no one can verify it or whatnot. But I kind of never went through that super awkward phase. So as
Yeah.
I always tell girls I date, I'm like, good news is it doesn't get much worse than this. Bad news is it doesn't get much better.
Yeah.
So like I never went through the acne phase, or I had big old Coke bottle glasses, or like super janky teeth with. I never had any. I had braces once for 9 months.
Yeah.
So again, it was kind of like, and we were pretty good at sports. So by virtue of that, we were always pretty popular. Carter, on the other hand, I'll let him chime in, but I
had
think he went
acne
through
and
the
fucked up
yeah, he
teeth
was in
and
the
like, "What's up,
he
I'm
was
Carter?"
he was putting Accutane in business for a little while and stuff like that.
I was right there with you. Man.
I mean, it's why Courtney and I are good business partners because we grew up playing sports together. Courtney was a very good athlete, and then he was the best athlete on the team, and then I was the second best. So
Yeah.
when we played high school soccer, it was either I pass to him, he scores, or vice versa. So we had, there's kind of 2 types of brother relationships. There's the type where it's like you beat up your little brother, and then
Yeah.
there's the type where you're kind of teammates.
Yeah.
We always had that teammate thing. So I was lucky. Like in 8th grade, my brother, who was a sophomore at the time, but could drive because he was a little old for his age. We won't go into that.
Yeah.
I guess it's a cutoff birthday or something.
Summer
But
birthday.
he would introduce, like he'd take me to the high school party. So imagine an 8th grader going to high school parties, and so freshman year, it was the obvious thing to do was to date the girl whose dad was the gym teacher, was the captain of the cheerleading squad, who was a senior, so she could drive me around. So I had a good because of him.
Well, I was when my brother got to high school, and I was a junior, already had my license, so I'll never forget my brother's first day This girl was like, and we can edit this if you want, but I like this story.
Yeah,
First day of high school, this girl's like, hey, can I have a ride home? I was like, sure, but my girlfriend's sitting in the front, and it's my brother's first day, so I need him to have a good first day. She's like, okay, can I have a ride home? I was like, well, sure, but you have to make out with him in the back. It's his first day.
And
She's
she
like,
did.
okay, yeah.
And
So
make out she did.
yeah,
Son of a bitch.
Yeah,
upperclassmen
we should have
and all.
hung out in high school, man. We would have had the best time, man.
Our high school was like the movie Can't Hardly Wait.
And you guys never had a phase where like you hated each other?
Oh, of course. I mean, Carter didn't tell you that he had to call 911 on me once, but like, I mean, there's always
How old was that?
exceptions.
When was that? Like before high school?
I think it was New York City.
No.
No.
That was at our house in high school.
Oh, that's
You were
funny. that
holding the
is.
phone. You said, if you come one step closer, I'm calling 911.
And you did
He
it.
dials like 911, and I just did like a flying Jimmy Superfly snooker. And all I remember is you fell over and the phone like exploded and the batteries were everywhere.
So no 911.
So
Nobody
luckily
could
we only
save
got
you.
9-1.
Man, that's pretty incredible. Like I feel like I have a brother who's 4 years older than me. I love him to death, but it gave me a bit of a complex of like always trying to figure out how to shine, right? Because I always felt like he was always better than me at everything. And so it was like sort of the opposite. Like it gave me this weird like fire, which I think paid off later, but it gave me this like, how come I never get the love, right? But you guys just
That's
fucking
weird. I
help
never
each
felt
other.
that way.
Yeah. Now I'm
but
reevaluating my whole relationship.
But
Hold on, I'm gonna go
I
call my
do
brother real
think,
quick.
it is I can't relate yet, but hopefully soon. But I think part of it is that my parents were really good about, you realize as you get older, if you have one child that seems to be the super talented one, it's hard to make your kids feel loved equally and appreciated. Our
Yeah.
parents were really good about making us all feel like we had unique talents and we were different, and they're not better or worse. They're just different, and we love them all the same.
So
Yeah.
Courtney's different.
Yeah, so Courtney is
I'm like super smart and Courtney's different. but they
Courtney's
loved
just
us
in the
equally.
different. But you know what?
Yeah.
We love you. You're special.
They're like, we named you
Special
Courtney. You're different. You're special.
Exactly.
Our special little
our
Courtney
special
with
little
no
Courtney.
acne and perfect skin. What about like? So you guys played sports. I guess what I'm just trying to wrap my head around is like Chicago. Obviously, your dad's working super hard. What'd your mom do?
So our mom, as she likes to say, was CEO of the household. And
Perfect.
then when I used to tell people that when I worked at Goldman Sachs, they're like, the household, I'm not familiar. Is that a public company?
Yeah.
I was
How are
like,
they doing?
no, it's a very private company. It's just a joke. Anyways, see you around, Charlie. But no, so our parents got married really young. My dad had just graduated law school at Michigan, and my mom had just graduated as an undergrad, and they got married right after. But they waited almost 10 years to have kids, me being the oldest. So my mom did a bunch of jobs, everything from kind of a finance investment banker type job.
Yeah.
She did some ballet dancing and then was a third grade teacher. So she had like a 10-year career of doing a lot of interesting stuff before
Yeah.
kids, and
That's great.
then had us.
It's a good game plan. I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
What was like their parenting style? Like, were they super strict or disciplinary, or like how were you? Just because you guys seem like very like sort of.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, so my brother and I and sister all went to Columbia, and my dad had gone to Ivy League schools, but there was never a pressure to do that, right? There was always, we were just always put in an environment where success, working hard, hustling was just kind of, we just kind of thought that was the norm, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I graduated with a 4.0 from Columbia. It was never my intention to graduate with a 4.0 from Columbia, but we're just ultra competitive, so it just never crossed my mind that I'd graduate with anything but a 4.0, because why should I let the other kid get better grades than I
Yeah.
do? So I think we had a really unique sense, of that sense, where they would have been happy if we ended up here or there, or worked at Goldman Sachs, or had done something totally different and creative. And so they were really big on not putting any pressure on us, but giving us an environment, whether it was with resources, like, you know, my dad was the type where like, oh, we want to play soccer. He's like, perfect. I'm going to mow the backyard. We'll get, you know,
Yeah.
he built a giant wood fence type thing so we could kick the soccer ball
Wall.
against it. What? Wall.
Wall, not
Sorry, wall.
Fence would be real good for drills. A lot of jogging.
Yeah, exactly. So they were just the type, they always just wanted to put us in winning positions, but never had pressure, right? And so that's a pretty cool thing, because, right, you build the foundation and then you kind of see what sprouts from there, right?
Yeah.
Couple footnotes to that. One, I think my brother mentioned his 4.0 3 times, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that. I guess you know, you can call Vito if you need to edit anything here. But I just recently had to take that off his bio. I'm like, that's been like 15 years since that. But okay, we can. So he's getting it out other ways. He's
What was
acting out.
your grade point average? Just
Not a
curious.
4.0,
Okay.
but still good enough to get a job at Goldman Sachs. I mean, it was well over 3.5, but you know, 4.0 4.0. I used to say, I mean, the difference between whatever I had, 3.6 something. This is before grade inflation. 3.6 something. The difference between that and 4.0.
There's a lot of fun Thursdays.
Yeah, doesn't sound that fun, but I played sports, was in a fraternity, did the whole student council, student president thing. So I kind of had the
like
more
had
well-rounded
friends.
thing. Yeah, exactly. My brother was like a machine. It was like workout, study.
No, I
go
remember
out,
I knew the
sleep,
one
repeat
Asian kid
cycle.
in the library. We were homies. We were tight. No, I'm just kidding.
There, we had a homie in the library. Is that kind of like in all seriousness the difference of your guys' personality a little bit? Like, are you guys more like, or were you in college, or is that complete just?
No, my claim to fame was I never sacrificed a night of going out to study. But I think it's what makes us good business partners is we're very similar, but we also have kind of complementary skill sets, right? Like I'm super analytical. It's not to say Courtney's an idiot. He's pretty smart, but he's really good at a bunch of other
3.6.
things. Would
He's
Courtney
no
tell him what
4.0,
I
but,
mean, no, he's good at a lot of other things. So no, but we play off each other really well.
Yeah, that's good. Was soccer the big thing? What was the big sport
Yeah, soccer.
for both of you?
We did a bunch of other sports, and soccer just kind of ended up being the one we were best at. My dad was a college basketball player, really good one.
Yeah.
As he likes to always say, he was all-state when all-state really meant something. And in a state like Illinois, he's from the, he played all the inner city schools as like their rivals and was all-state when all-state meant 5 people in a starting 5 and not like this second team, third team honorable mention.
Yeah.
And like I said, my mom was a great athlete too. So we came from good athletes, played a bunch of sports, obviously played basketball. And then we started playing soccer pretty late by today's standards. These kids are playing like 3, 4.
Yeah.
I don't really remember how old I was, but I think it was like 8 or 9, which is pretty late. So we were late bloomers, but became best at soccer.
Yeah, it was really funny. Our coach coached a bunch of the girls on the U.S. women's national team. So we were like 13, 12, 14, scrimmaging all the time at our house with all these girls on the women's national team. So just tells you something.
That's incredible. And
Even if they're like 18 and you're like 13, nothing more humbling than getting juked by a girl.
100%. Absolutely. Damn it. So you guys played on the same team, right? Or no?
Yeah, we played in high school. We played on the same team.
Got it.
He was kind of the star, and then I came.
And he was
came
best and you were
behind him.
second best.
Yeah.
Different club teams because those went by age. But but
that's cool.
my club team was like state champion every year.
And you guys won the national championship.
We were, my club team was the first team from Illinois to win the national championship. And every year, the club team, which I didn't play on every year, but I played on it kind of my teens on up, they would basically just pick up what they thought were the best couple guys available in the state, drop the couple worst guys from our team, so you just didn't want to be like number 15 through 18 or else you were in jeopardy of the pink slip. But we had such a better team than everyone that, for these travel club teams, that by the time I was a senior in high school, we won the state championship game 8-1, which for anyone that knows soccer, I mean, that's a
shit ton.
hockey score. And then so I mean, I had a hat trick that game.
Thank you.
And I didn't even start. I came off the bench and I had a hat trick. I mean, so I think pretty much every guy except for one played D1 soccer on our team. And I think that guy just wanted to smoke a little bit and be a snowboarding instructor, but he was really good.
Yeah. Did you ever think you were going to be a pro soccer player?
Sure. I mean, I don't think you put that much time into it unless you think you're going to be. I mean,
But I mean, like, were you like, this is my future? One thing I always like to wrap my head around on this, because I see the patterns, is like there's always that early dream that you're real passionate about, like in high school, that most of the time doesn't end up being, except for when I interviewed Kyrie Irving, right? His kind of panned out. But it usually you have this kind of early dream that you're real passionate about, and then it sort of turns into the real life one. But did you have that phase?
It definitely wasn't one of those that I thought about it every day from the time I was a kid. Like I said, it was probably a weirder arc than most because I think I started late.
Yeah.
So I sucked for a long time. My dad would tell stories of like, me like not even running toward the ball or like crossing my arms on the field. And he would start with basics like, so when the coach goes to substitute, just don't look his way for quite so long and uncross your arms. We'll deal with touching the ball, much less being good later. So I definitely bloomed late and I think got really good more like in high school, which was pretty late.
Yeah.
And then I probably had those thoughts, but I played a good bit freshman year of college at Columbia, and I was lucky I had my choice of a lot of schools just because of soccer. But I tore my ACL first day of sophomore year when I thought I was going to be a starter, and there was probably a little thought of like, who knows where this could go. But
talk about your perspective, because I think a lot, like you played a ton as a freshman. You were Columbia was top 20 in the country. You tore your ACL. You're going to school in New York City, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, oh, I'm in New York City. There's actually life beyond the soccer field in Harlem.
Yeah, is that how
Yeah,
that
so
went?
So I mean, I think
that's
because
exactly-
it changed my perspective quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I was going because I think
Good
it's
work, man. I don't even need to say anything.
yeah.
I like this.
I mean,
Soft
he was definitely an underhand pitch. I was already headed there before he cut me off. But yeah, I mean, again, you tear your ACL, and it's never an insignificant thing, but I think it's a bigger deal even then. You know, this was 1998, 1999 than it is now, and it was a real year and no shortchanging it. So you had to think about other things. My freshman year was largely about studying and playing soccer, and so then sophomore year became about, like I said, doing kind of student government type things. I joined Sigma Chi fraternity. I went and explored New York City a lot, and even did something like worked for Zagat, the restaurant guide, when people used to do restaurant reviews.
Or it was their first intern ever, right?
I'm the founder of their internship program.
Yeah.
Literally through calling and writing letters to the point where the guy said, fine, picks up the phone and says,
Why that?
You
Why'd
can come in 3 days a week, I'll pay you $7
Yeah, why the
an
little
hour.
Why'd you
red guy.
gravitate to Zagat? Like,
You
why
know,
that? Why were you so
It's like when
passionate
people
about
are like, I'm a foodie. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I like to eat too. So it was like,
it? That's you're like,
There's
Yeah,
gonna
but
probably
Courtney
be
used
some
to
free
annotate
meals and-
his.
yeah.
Like my parents would come to town. I mean, he had his list of like the hit list. He's like, where are mom and dad taking me, right? I mean, he had, going to school in New York City, you have the places where you're like $2 meal in Queens
Yeah.
with the best, noodles. But then when your parents come to town, you're like, I hear this
yeah.
place, Jean Georges.
yeah, just turn to that top 50 page and just start dog earing it. Yes.
damn it, that's good. And then, Carter, where did you, so he goes off to college. How's that process go? Meaning, like, first of all, I guess my question is, like, when brother goes off to college, are you like hyped? Like, I get 2 years by myself. Fuck this.
No, he was feeding me girls left and right. He was the
I
other
thought it
part
was-
of my
yeah.
battery,
Yeah.
I was like, shoot, who's going to pass to me so I can score? Who can I
Yeah.
pass to? It was interesting because I thought about going to Harvard, and I think a lot of people just expected me to go to Harvard. And I kind of called a last minute audible and went to Columbia, and then half the people who thought I was going to go to Harvard goes, oh, of course you're going to Columbia, your brother's there. But I think what's interesting about our journey is we've done similar things along the way. We both went to Columbia, both worked at Goldman, and now both do stuff together. But we were never the type of brothers that were like, we have to do it together, like matching underwear and like, twin beds and when on vacation.
Yeah.
It was more than just we were always looking out for each other, right? So
that's cool.
he got to Columbia, he kind of paved the way. He knew the director of admissions. He's like, I got you. I'll make sure we go have lunch with him, stuff like that. And like I even worked at Goldman as a summer before he went to go work there full time. I was like, oh shoot, this place Goldman Sachs, it's pretty dope, right?
they're
You
doing
should
some
come, right?
interesting things over there.
Exactly. So we just kind of always looked out for each other. So
That's cool. That's really fucking cool. You guys have a really interesting relationship. So you worked at Goldman first.
So I worked at Goldman first. Actually, Courtney had just graduated when September 11th happened.
Yep.
So he had a lot of friends that had literally started work, a few weeks prior. So it was a tough time period. And I decided after September 11th, I wanted to go clear my head. So I made a deal with my dad that I could take the spring semester off, and I would try to get a finance job. And if I couldn't get a finance job, I could just go bartender somewhere, just to kind of break up the monotony of college, because I was doing well, I was having fun, but it just kind of felt like you were just like, it was going to be done, right? And I kind of wanted to break it up. So my dad actually, funny enough, gave me, again, this was kind of pre-email by a little bit, gave me something from the Harvard Business Review, some guy who had written a book about venture capital in Australia, kind of considered to be the father of Australia. Wrote him a letter, believe it or not, gave me an internship because he's married to an American woman. Went over there and worked for 6 months in venture capital, investing in Australian tech companies. Came back and worked at Goldman, and then my brother for a summer. And then Courtney, you went and worked there full time.
And there was just something about investing, investment banking, that stuff that you guys just really enjoyed from the beginning.
Yeah, I think, enjoyed is a relative term when you're doing 100 hours a week. I mean, I'm not sure I enjoy anything 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we didn't, to your question earlier, I don't think, at least I can say I didn't know I wanted to do X, and X wasn't necessarily play soccer or be an investment banker. But upon further review, I think investment banking, and especially at a place like Goldman Sachs, where we're lucky enough to work, it just gives you options. And our parents, especially my dad, was a lot about like, look, you don't have to do this for life, but it's good to keep your options open.
Yeah.
And there's very few doors that shut, even if you decide to do something totally different, where you put on your resume or say to someone, hey, I got trained at Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I always tell people like, the job I got at Goldman Sachs was the easiest job I ever got. And they're like, wow, that kid is cocky. And I was like, I don't mean it like that, but they come to a place like Columbia, you submit your resume, they come to the conference room, you interview, and next thing you know, you got a job. And it does help you. I mean, I remember in the early days when we moved to LA, right? Goldman Sachs is such a strong, powerful brand. We'd, whether it's meeting out a girl at a club or going to have a meeting, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're starting a liquor company." But we used to work at Goldman Sachs, and then they're like, their eyes light up, right?
100%.
We even
My eyes
probably-
light up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, man, that's so cool.
The joke that my dad used to do was, when he would kind of walk around or talk to his buddies, he would say, they'd be like, "Oh, how's it going?" And he'd be like, "I have 2 sons and they're both at Goldman Sachs." And then when we left that to start our alcohol brand VEEV, he'd be like, "I have 2 sons."
Then when we started getting press in places, then he thought we were cool again.
Yeah, there's something even about building and selling a massive liquor company that just isn't as, every person in the world knows what working at Goldman Sachs means. Even if you don't, you're like, oh, that's.
Yeah. I think that's the one
powerful.
thing for everyone.
You know what I mean? Like it's.
Yeah,
still-
but also to think about, right, is like, so in the old days, that was part of the process. You would tend to work at a place like, especially a Goldman or McKinsey or these type of places, right? And kind of gave you the credentials that allowed you to do a lot of flexibility to do whatever you wanted, right?
Yeah.
So we knew that if we worked at Goldman, started a liquor company and failed, we'd still have something to fall back on. So I think it's actually interesting for a lot of people to think about. And it also gave us a really good foundation of skills, right? You learn stuff that, finance, whether you're going to be a stay-at-home dad or run a business, you got to kind of know this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus now, if you're coming out of college and you're going right to an entrepreneurial venture or stuff like that, the challenge is you don't have that foundation, right? You don't have the foundation in terms of kind of credibility. We actually just don't have the foundation in terms of skill set, right? And so it's kind of an interesting kind of place in the world where we are now.
Yeah, that's the thing that I have the most FOMO about, right? In my life, like I've had a pretty cool journey. I've kind of figured it out, started this cool clothing company, done a lot of cool shit, right? And been relatively successful. I just wish I had like that, like Harvard business, Goldman Sachs.
I'm not sure it'd go with your look though, but I can get you a T-shirt if you want. Yeah, we can bring you a T-shirt next time.
I want it so bad. Like it's the only thing I'll never be able to get. Right? It doesn't matter what I
think we
do.
could get you a guest lecture at Harvard Business School or something.
Yeah.
Could that check the bucket list for you?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll do.
Grass is always greener, though, right?
That's true.
Listen, our parents were really good about figuring out how to give us opportunities and everything like that, and so we feel really lucky that we had those. And then you look at it and go, I want to go to Harvard and feel what that's like, and I look at it and go, well, sometimes I do ask myself, if we like absolutely came from nothing and had no opportunity, what would you make of yourself? And you'd like to think it comes down to the person and parents and the tribe and all that stuff, but you never know because they didn't have to do it exactly that way. It wasn't given to us, but we did have a lot of opportunity, or we found a way to get the opportunity.
Yeah. No, I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by that exact thing. Like, what is I don't think there's any answer that I'll ever learn or anyone will, but like, sort of what's the formula of what part is in your control, what part isn't, what's circumstance, what's not, I don't know. I just, my goal is one day to do 1,000 of these interviews and have some like,
some kind of pattern recognition.
Yeah.
But we should give one shout out to your cousin, Rob, who we love. And I think in the time I've spent with your cousin, just it's amazing to me the way he's fluid in when we're talking about deals or things that I've been trained to do and he clearly hasn't, yet he's picked it up really quickly. So I find that just incredibly impressive, his pattern recognition without the formal training, I'd say.
Yeah, that's what's really interesting. As being an entrepreneur, we go into a program where we never went to something like business school, but in being an entrepreneur, you learn in trench warfare, right? Like, so I always use the analogy, if I stab someone near their heart, I know they die more often than their arm. And that's kind of what you learn as an entrepreneur, right? But you never know the theory behind it, right? I'll be on a panel with the chief marketing officer of Heineken. He's like, that's classic such and such theory. And I'm on the panel and I'm like, hold on a second, let me take a note of that, right? Yeah. And then it's funny, you go back and do one of these programs at Harvard and you're like, that's the price discrimination curve, or that's the classic this, that, and the other. And again, you just know that certain things happen when you're an entrepreneur in the trenches. Then you're like, so when I stab him in his heart, I don't really do this, obviously, but he dies more often because he's got more blood flow there. And you're like, I get it, right? So it's really interesting. And then on the flip side, you go into some of these business schools and we'll walk out of, we've been teaching a case study on VEEV for the last 8 or 9 years. You're like, man, those kids are dumb. And you're like, they're not dumb. They're actually some of the smartest kids in the country. They just don't have the context, right? Because they've been up in the ivory tower and they don't know how it actually happens in kind of trench warfare, which is what I call being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's so true, man. It's just the two different worlds. I just wish I had a little bit more. Maybe one day when I like have a little bit more time and like I'll take some sort of, You can take some sort of like,
Yeah, there's a lot of great continuing
just to
education.
say, like, I have
things
this
now.
weird Harvard
Yeah.
online. It was a thing, but I have an
Yeah.
email receipt. And
Exactly.
it went super well.
You
Kinda
can
like
trust
a
me.
grainy thing on the
Just
wall. but
enough
yeah,
to put a grainy plaque on the wall.
exactly.
For enough money, you can definitely get alumni status at Harvard.
Easy. Okay, great. At least I have a goal.
You're on your way.
There we go. I guess then take me through like how long after, what'd you guys do right after Goldman Sachs? Or were you at Goldman and then you decided, hey, let's start our own thing and get out of here?
So I absolutely love Goldman. I was, as I joke around, the ultimate finance douchebag. At the time, I thought it was charming that they gave me a Patrick Bateman doll, life size, for Christmas. Now, in retrospect, I realize that probably wasn't as big a compliment as I thought,
Yeah.
But when you're at Goldman and you're 22 and you got a BlackBerry before people had BlackBerries, you
I
wore
would
it
be such
outside
a
your
douchebag,
jeans and
yeah.
the holster, and you have the slick back hair, power ties. I mean, you name it. You kind of think it's like you, and then below you is God.
Yes.
So I loved that. I loved finance. I was good at it. I took the first private equity firm, a famous place called KKR, that's written about in Barbarians at the Gate, public, and I was going to go work for a big kind of private equity firm and do investing. And my brother worked at Consumer Products, and you want to tell him about kind of the Under Armour IPO and kind of what got you excited about meeting Kevin Plank and starting us on the journey?
Sure. So
You're incredible.
And
next, Courtney will cover how we did this.
in 100 words or less. So at Goldman, I worked in the consumer products group. So I was smart enough to know that I wasn't going to do like financial services or something like that. So let's stick to consumer products, things you can touch, taste, hold.
Yeah.
And so I worked on some big deals like Procter & Gamble Gillette's merger, which was and I believe still is the biggest consumer products merger in history. But by Goldman standards, worked on more entrepreneurial, and I use that in quotes because they were still big companies, but entrepreneurial ventures like Vitamin Water, which isn't my favorite product to drink, but an incredible marketing story.
Yeah.
And then I helped with the IPO of Under Armour.
Yep.
And you meet a guy like Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, and you go, wow, if he can do it, I don't know if I can, but sure going to give it a shot. Doesn't seem that much older than me, doesn't seem that much smarter. He's clearly has a lot of grit and tenaciousness and all that stuff. And so I think that was those experiences were some of the sparks to want to do our own thing.
Yeah, and it's tough to put in perspective, but 10 years ago when Courtney's 25 and Kevin Plank's probably, 32 years old, and he's sitting across from the table from a guy who was a former football player in Maryland, who's IPO, $1 billion company. You're like, wow, that's like a real entrepreneur. Again, this was crazy talk to be, and when we told people we were going to leave Goldman to start a liquor company, they thought we were really batshit crazy. Again, fast forward to today, if we walked out of Goldman and said, hey, we're starting a brand, high fives, they throw a going away party for us. They go, of course you are, right?
Yeah.
And it's tough for people to put into perspective. 10 years ago, there weren't many Kevin Planks in the world, right? And so for Courtney to get to meet a guy like that, spend time on him and go, oh shit, if that guy can do it, I don't know if I can, but I sure as heck want to give it a shot.
Yeah.
I think it's like you always need those little fortuitous, coincidental kismet moments, right? If you read like a Malcolm Gladwell Outliers, right? Clearly Bill Gates has a lot of incredible things going, but he did also get some kismet, which is that his mom, the details are something like this. His mom worked at the Seattle Public Library, which had one of a handful of supercomputers in the whole country.
Yep.
Who knows what it would have been like if he wasn't exposed to that and had some of that good fortune.
100%. And that's, once again, that's a lot of the drive behind the podcast, right? Is I want to give people those moments. I had the same thing. When I moved to LA blindly with the goal of working at a skate shop and living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and all my dreams would have been...
That's a great goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you've accomplished that, so you
hit
must
it.
feel good about that.
So I'm going to go ahead and go back to
I bet you
Ohio.
have a 2-bedroom, though, no?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you have a little more real estate now.
Carter, it's his show. Could you let him at least finish his
No,
goal?
I like
Go ahead,
it. I
please,
like
let's
it.
hear your goal.
So
I'd like to hear it at least.
What I always say is that was like my ceiling, right? And now if that was, not to hate on anyone who's doing that, but if that was my life now, obviously I wouldn't trade it. The point is, the only reason, being 100% honest, why I went on and did more was because I saw that it was even possible. Like my brain could not compute that it was possible for me to do more than maybe manage a skateboard shop and have maybe a 2-bedroom. Like that was like it. Like I'm pushing all the boundaries. And it was just seeing it and being exposed to it. So that's what I like. I think one of my biggest goals is like trying to expose people to that Kevin Plank meeting or that one run-in that, I want someone to listen to this and be like, shit, man, I'm like them. Like if they can do this, I can do this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And if we could also fanboy for 1 second, when you were so nice to invite us on here, my brother was very excited because he's a big fan of what you've built with Young and Reckless.
Well, thank you, Carter.
Yeah, I always tell people enough about you, but I was going to say is that
Moment over.
Man, we could just do a podcast together, just a weekly show.
Exactly.
This is good.
But it's funny because I'm sure people ask you the same thing. They're like, "How should I know if I want to be an entrepreneur? How did you know?" And I always joke around. We were kind of young and stupid enough to think leaving our cushy jobs at Goldman and going on and starting our own thing was a good idea, but you have to have a little bit of that, right? Because I talk to so many people that it might be kind of family, it might be their job, things like that. Like there's never a good time to be an entrepreneur, right? The odds are always against you, but you have to be willing and think that you could actually run through walls, right?
There's definitely always that. If I had known then what I know now.
Always.
But we recently wrote a book, and one of the endorsements we got is from a guy who we look up to a lot named Juan Enriquez, who's like they call him a futurist, but he's got, to give you an idea, he's got one of the most viewed TED Talks of all time.
Yep.
And we asked him to write a blurb for the book. And the blurb goes something like this. It was like, so you think you want to be an entrepreneur? ? You sure? ? Okay, if you do, this is a good guide. And you gotta write it tongue in cheek. But that's about
really
how
good.
I feel about it, right? So
Yeah.
we definitely spend the first couple pages up front. I think we call it something like the entrepreneurial readiness test.
Yep.
Trying to convince you all the reasons you shouldn't do it, and then
Yeah.
if you want to,
It's so
Here's
good.
what
here we
do.
go.
I forget who I had on here. Who was that, Dan, that kept saying over and over, like, you should quit? Ryan Holiday, I think. You guys know Ryan Holiday or read his book?
I've met Ryan. I big fan of his work.
Yeah.
But I like what Ryan does.
Yeah,
a
but
lot.
he was real big on on the preaching, like you should quit thing, because if you can, then you will. I think what I was going to say too is what's really interesting. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think part of this, everyone thinking that they're an entrepreneur right now or wanting to be one, is because you now can follow. Now you have access to like who Kevin Plank is, right? Where before you didn't. So you just assumed that whoever was running Under Armour was some super genius that had 10 years of schooling and blah, 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 right? Now you can follow all the Gary V's and the everybody on social media, and you can see like, well, he doesn't seem much smarter than me. You know what I mean? Like you have that same moment. I think these kids all around the country are having that same moment that you guys had at Goldman. Once again, I don't know if it's good or bad because I think there's a lot of fake ideas of what it takes to actually be that. And I think that it's kind of watering down that whole world. But in the end, probably will there be more entrepreneurs than there would have been with no social media? Probably, right? But it's an interesting thing that's happening.
Yeah. I
Like
mean, our dad was always a big believer in that quote where it's like ideas are cheap, execution is dear. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I have friends that come up with an idea a week, but they've never executed on one. But as I'm sure we can all relate living here in LA, whether you're on the Beverly Hills side or the West Hollywood side, I like to joke the three most overused words in LA are entrepreneur,
Yeah.
meeting, and synergy. You know, I mean, I'm like, no, that's not a meeting. What you just called a meeting.
Yep.
Entrepreneur is very loose, and then
Yeah.
synergies.
Yeah,
In
I think-
our world, it's let's build. Let's build is a big one. Let's activate. Like let's just, I don't know, we got an event coming up. We'd love for you guys to activate. You know what I mean? I don't know, call me. Let's build. It's always like, all right,
Right,
we're
but you can
building.
combine them where it's like there's so many synergies between us. Let's activate.
Oh
you
my
can-
God.
Yeah, I
We could
think-
have a whole conversation that means
Right.
nothing.
Yeah, seriously.
One of the interesting things I always tell people, like entrepreneurship's like being a pro athlete coming out of high school, right? So we sensationalize all the big winners, right? So Zuckerberg or Kevin Garnett, who went from high school to the pros. And one of the things that I always remind people is for every guy that you know who went from high school to the NBA, there's probably about 99 guys that you don't remember their name. Does anyone remember Kwame Brown?
Yeah.
I'd hate to know where Kwame Brown is right now, but
Yeah.
I promise you it's not in a great place, right? And entrepreneurship's kind of the same way, right? We sensationalize all the big winners.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shoot, I can be like Zuckerberg, right? And so the fact of it is the chances are you're not going to be Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the good and the bad, right? It causes people to dream big and just go for it.
Yeah.
The other thing is I think it kind of dilutes down what reality is because chances are you have a greater shot of winning the Powerball than being Mark Zuckerberg, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And also you can't show. The interesting part is like if you want to be a doctor, you can show the road to becoming a doctor, right? I'm not saying it's easy, but you can map it out. Like with an entrepreneur, not only are we're only showing everyone's highlight reel. So we're only showing the best people, we're only showing the best moments of their lives, and we're not showing at all even what it took to become that guy. And being an entrepreneur is so like there are no rules. There's no school, there's no class, there's no blueprint. Like you wake up every morning and essentially make up what to do. And that's what I think is so dangerous. Is I think that you're sending a lot of young people that are kind of entitled, because that word entrepreneur is like, don't talk like I'm an entrepreneur. You can't tell me what to do, with no rules or idea of what it really takes to execute that.
I mean, for me, I always said I don't think I could be an actor, probably for a bunch of reasons, but one of them being that it's such a non-linear path, whereas, as you just said, being a doctor is a very linear path.
Yeah.
But for all the same reasons that I didn't think I could be an actor, now I'm an entrepreneur where again, it's a very non-linear path, and it's hard to know exactly what will help whatever you're doing pop.
Yeah.
Like you said, my favorite entrepreneur is the kid who actually knows nothing, but is so arrogant, thinks he knows everything. I'm like, oh, let me have this meeting over and over. I was like, you know nothing.
Yeah.
You've had no success, and you're actually not humble enough to learn. Like if I have one advice for anyone who's starting off is, man, just be humble enough to learn, right? Like soak it in, like be around guys like you and go, hey, how did you do it? Ask questions, because those are the guys that end up being successful. I just laugh at the guys, literally no skill set, no success, but got everything figured out. 100%. I want to be that guy.
No shit. Must be
exactly.
nice.
Must be nice, you know?
Jesus.
They see unicorns in the field, you know?
100%. That's what I think. I feel kind of potentially old and bitter when I say these type of things, but I just feel like we're creating a lot of those right now. Like, I think there's more of those than ever. And I think that, like, the same way you said leaving Goldman Sachs to say we're starting our own company 10 years ago versus now, people would cheer for you. I think when you leave high school right now and say, I'm going to go start my own company, the teachers, everyone's probably like, yeah, you do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, no, don't.
One of the founders of WeWork recently said that she thinks kids in grade school should be, cultivating businesses. And I'm like, why don't we just let them be in grade school for a second? But I mean, that's just me. But
How about Legos?
I mean, it's called a lemonade stand, right?
Damn it. Yeah, no, I'm really fascinated by that whole thing. And I think, like I said, in the end, I think that it turns out more entrepreneurs than had they not been exposed to it. I think it's a good ending, but in general, I feel like we're creating a lot of little douchebags and a lot of little Instagram models and a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's a lot of...
Well, when you think about social media and tech, right? Like, a lot of this stuff, it's all about only showing what you want to show, right? We can control the narrative more than ever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure you have some shitty days, but I'm sure you don't put those on your Instagram, right?
I sure don't.
Exactly.
Like I have the best life
You're
ever.
No dummy, right?
Yeah.
Like PJ Game, show them, man.
Yeah, come
the
on.
guy who wanted to, do the skate shop now, doing the good stuff.
Yeah, look at me.
But, people actually believe that, right? That's the scary part, is like people actually believe that's what it's like. And it goes, no, man, there's a reason they post every 4 days, because the 3 days in between sucks.
Yeah. So true. Damn it.
Yep. Blessed to be blessed.
Too blessed to be stressed. Okay, so tell me about, so when you guys walked out of Goldman, like, were you nervous?
I think we were young enough and stupid enough not to be nervous, right?
That's great thing,
that's kind of the thing. You just got to be young enough and stupid enough to think it's a good idea, right?
Yep.
So I remember Courtney knew he was going to be entrepreneurial, so he had not taken a job after Goldman because he really wanted to find what he was going to do.
Yep.
I went to go work at a big private equity firm, and you take the job a year in advance.
Yep.
That's how it worked at the time. And I showed up like 3 days, and I said, I'm not going to show up on Monday because I'm starting a liquor company. And they didn't even know what to say. The guy just looked at me, just kept looking at me, kind of funny. He was like peering into my soul. He said, but don't you want to see your office? We got your nameplate on. I was like, no, I'm going to go do this entrepreneurial thing with my brother. And he literally didn't even know what to say. He didn't know whether to talk me out of it, to feel bad for me, to hold me, to hug me, to cry with me. It was just the greatest thing. It was just so dumbfounding for him that I was actually going to turn down this high-paying finance job to be in quote-unquote entrepreneurial. So
How many years ago was that?
10 years ago.
10.
Yep.
And that's just the difference. You think now it would be like, okay, cool,
Oh,
man.
yeah,
good
the guy'd
luck.
be like, oh, of course you are.
Godspeed.
Damn it, we lost another one.
Yeah.
Startup world.
Shit. What
Fucking
is it? Let me guess.
startups.
Vodka. Great.
Another dude.
How'd you decide on liquor?
It was I did a little work on one big alcohol M&A deal
Yeah.
that I didn't end up actually working on. Just did a bunch of due diligence. Thought it was interesting the way the big companies didn't truly innovate. They just kind of ended up doing, if you're Bacardi, you launch another Bacardi Super Mellow and Gold. You don't actually do something that's innovative as a product in the bottle and as a company. And so we thought if we did something different, it would have a shot, and it did. But certainly when you read a 10K or look at a bunch of research reports. That doesn't tell you how hard it is on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, this was not a super well researched idea, right? Like today,
I like
right?
that. I'm glad because I thought you guys were going to say like, well, judging by our analytics, we decided it was the perfect gap in the
Look, I was
marketplace.
thinking chicks,
Yep.
Brazil, pool, Beverly Hills. It was time to take my show to
Thank God, man.
to
I like that you
Hollywood.
still
Let's
have
keep
those
it
like
real.
ignorant thoughts.
And then
like
the
we all
darndest
do.
thing happened. It became a real company. We started having success. I was like, dude, Courtney, we can't sit by the pool anymore with the
This is
chicks and
stupid.
drink our vodka. We totally effed this one up.
The best is that, people would be like, what do you do all day? Like when we had an alcohol company, as if we're sitting there drinking. I'm like, oh, I just basically drink all day. I'm like permanently buzzed
but like,
or
what do you
hungover.
do?
And they're like, that's what I thought. And I'm like, no,
You're
it's
an
just a
idiot.
company. Like any company, whether you're making shoes or hats or alcohol, you run it like a company. But no, it to Carter's point, when the idea was actually hatched for VEEV, we were both working for Goldman Sachs, but I left New York and was living in Australia.
Yeah.
And so I had a buddy there who I also kind of once a week tried to get together and do business ideas with. And we came up with, a payments thing before payments got hot, an integrated wellness center, an idea for redoing the cemetery system, because when you think how inefficient they are, I mean, these were some good ideas, but he ended up really liking this financial payments idea and this parking technology idea, and it was literally as simple as going, the alcohol sounds more fun. And he's going to be a very successful entrepreneur too, but I wasn't sure that was going to add value or be as interested in, credit card payment processing.
Yeah. Was it as fun as you had hoped, other than the silly work part? Like, was actually running an
Absolutely,
alcohol
yeah.
company that
I
had
mean-
all the perks you hoped it would?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, you still got to do a lot of boring things, whether you're selling alcohol or whether you're selling widgets, but it sure as hell more fun to sell alcohol than widgets.
Yeah.
I was joking around that owning a liquor company was like having cigarettes in prison. It's the ultimate currency.
Yeah.
And I always tell people that because I think it's interesting to think about. You see a lot of guys that start businesses that what I call currency businesses, right?
Yep.
They know it's gonna put them in an interesting intersection.
Yep.
We didn't know it at the time. We just thought an alcohol brand sounded fun. But it's amazing how many successful entrepreneurs, or like people. We ended up as a case study in Richard Branson's last book, and people were like, "Oh my God, how did that happen? Oh my God, that's so cool!" And they're waiting for this big grand story of blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, the book before 2 years earlier. Someone called and said Richard Branson needs booze for his launch party. We were smart enough to not only provide the booze, but show up with the booze.
Yeah.
Get to know Richard Branson, and 2 years later, we're a case study in his book,
Yeah.
right? So it opened a ton of doors for us in that perspective.
Yeah, I think the best good is that it was fun, it was interesting, it got us a lot of great rooms, and certainly whatever we do after this would not have been possible. I genuinely believe were it not for VEEV. The bad is that I like businesses now when you draw that little circle. You guys can't see me, but I'm drawing a little circle of things you can control in alcohol and a much bigger circle of things you can't control.
Yeah.
I don't like the proportion of those circles, whereas most things we do now, I think we try and draw a much bigger circle of what we can control, and
Yep.
therefore what we could control ended up coming down a lot to just very basic blocking and tackling execution, which is a grind like a lot of businesses. And
Yeah.
so it was not this sexy alcohol thing. Eventually, right before we sold it, it was just, we just need to out execute other people and get it on the shelf and all that other trench
Yeah.
warfare.
Was that the hardest part? Just the grind of the trench warfare?
Yeah,
as you call
I
it?
think at some point, it becomes slightly less sensationalized and romanticized, where you go, gosh, we do have a good product. It's been fun. We've met this person. We're at Disney's #1 selling cocktail worldwide. We're on Virgin America. Have the signature cocktail, Nobu, all these sexy things. But then you realize you've got it from the ground to here. And in order to kind of finish the job, it is so just about the basics. And there was going to be no shortcutting that.
Yeah, one thing I think we learned that I'm sure you've learned it here is that I always tell people so often what gets you from A to B is different than what gets you from B to C, right?
Yeah.
So, they talk about as an entrepreneur, or even if you're Jack Welch when he took over GE back in the day, like it was an interesting journey for us because it's not linear, right? It goes up, it goes down, it goes up. You just got to keep hoping you go up or right? And you got to get there. But, whether it was what we spend our days doing. In the early days, it was spending our days drinking, right? It was, we got into 25 accounts around LA. We delivered the booze out of the back of our car.
Yeah.
And every night we were sub promoters and we're like getting buddies that, hey, can you go to that bar? Can you have a drink? Can you sit on the stool? When the bartender pours it, go, oh my gosh, I love VEEV. I think I just read about it in the LA magazine, right?
Yeah.
But then, within a year, like that was not our job, right? And then we were getting into Walmart and Target, and our job was, oh shit, how to like inventory management and things like that.
Can we say shit on your podcast?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I heard
Okay,
it
good.
earlier.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly.
This is the problem with my brother is that he swears like a sailor, which would
but I
not
think he
make my
went by
parents
me.
happy. But he thinks it's
dropping
like
F-bombs early.
right. But he thinks it's like for effect, and I'm like, but when
Tony
you do
Robbins
it like
said
Tony
you do that.
Robbins,
Yeah,
he
this
did.
is
Tony
his
Robbins.
thing, and I'm
He
like,
did, he
right.
did.
But I'm like, Carter, you're not 6'7" with a voice that sounds like James Earl Jones 3 octaves deeper, so it just doesn't have the same effect. And when you do it, Tony does it because he's trying to hypnotise you to quit smoking. He gets in your face and he's like drooling like Turner and Hooch and stuff. Yeah, you're gonna remember that. You're not gonna want to smoke. When Carter does it, you're just like, God, that's a pretty uncouth, crass guy.
I think.
To be
Did he
fair,
mention he had a
Courtney-
4.0?
Yeah,
yeah, he
to be
goes-
fair, Courtney's been telling me my whole life I have the perfect face for radio, so I'm a little excited here to be
Yeah,
on your
so let the-
podcast.
let the
This is
shits
my time
fly.
to shine, right? So enough about Courtney. So, but I think when you think about A to B, B to C, it's something for a lot of people to think about. Like
Yeah.
we actually had to get new employees because the employees that we had from A to B, unfortunately,
Yeah.
were not the right ones for B to C.
Yeah.
Right? Those were guys that were willing to go out and drink copious amounts every night. We didn't need that guy anymore. We needed the person that could sell into Walmart. So
Yeah, it's so true.
That was deep. You should write a book.
Wait a minute. Let's talk about that.
I'm glad you asked.
So, and I want to get to that part too. You said 130, right?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. So first, let me just ask this. So you build this thing up. When did you decide it was time to sell it? Or was that all? Let me ask you this. Was that always part of the plan?
That was always part of the plan.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
so-
the way these companies are built, they're not sustainable unless you become the Tito of Tito's vodka.
So I think that's one of the scary things about liquor is that basically that it's very difficult to be a standalone entity because the P&L doesn't make sense, right? You basically have the same sales force Bacardi does. You're selling one product, they're selling 30 products.
Yep.
You're giving 30 points to the distributor, they're giving 18 points. So eventually you have to kind of do it to get the economies of scale.
Yep. And so did you just say that, was there like a mental marker of like, if we can get to this much revenue, we have a chance of having a real exit here? Is that how it went?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we were actually pretty spot off about a lot of things when we started. We were pretty spot on that we could probably get it about to this many cases, and if we could, it was going to be viable, and we were probably within 10% of that estimate.
And you needed to get to that many cases so the big guys could understand that they could scale, right? That was kind of their mental thing going, oh, wow, there's something here. We can make this double, triple, 4X.
Did you go shop it or did they come to you? Did you start getting calls?
Little bit of both, I mean, they didn't break down the door, which at first made us worried that the door was never going to open.
Yeah.
And then I think you realize that, I mean, companies get the doors broken down, but those are the ones you read about, especially, I think if we're honest, something like VEEV and our other product, Vitafruit, just in a world that's dominated by the Diageos and whatnot, VEEV was very much a nice to have, but not a need to have. But there's just really very few need to have. So it's about getting out there, telling your story, kind of pre-courting the buyers in a way that doesn't seem desperate. Because as they say, you want your company to get bought, not go out and try to sell it.
Yep.
And that's a key distinction.
Yep. Okay, so quickly on M13, and then I want to get to the book while we have time. So you sold that. You did well, right? You're happy. You accomplished the goal. Did you guys know, like, okay, let's sell this, and then pretty quickly after, I think we could go into like doing the M13 style business, or did that come as a natural? Like, what was that transition mentally?
Yeah, we'd been investing for the last kind of 4 or 5 years while we owned VEEV, and so for us, kind of M13 was kind of our natural transition from kind of being part-time investors and operating VEEV to kind of where we saw the world going next.
Got it. And did you raise money for M13, or it's your own money?
Just our own money.
Got it. And you guys were in on Lyft and on what are the big ones?
Yeah. So our first 3 venture bets ever were we seeded Warby Parker, Birchbox, and Bonobo. So better to be lucky than good right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And then we've been in everything from Shake Shack pre-IPO, Lyft, Pinterest, SpaceX, really cool wireless doorbell company that's worth a lot here in LA called Ring.
Yeah.
And then we've done a lot of food and beverage. So
Thrive Market.
So you've done well.
Stuff like that. So
You guys kind of know what you're doing a little bit.
Well, and it's like Vegas. We only talk about the winners.
Yeah,
Yes,
of course.
exactly.
Sure. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Okay, so is what motivated you to write the book? Like, is it sort of, okay, we've looked at all these companies. We now know our formula of a good company, a bad company. Let's put that out to the world and share with everyone how to make a good company, or?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so what we saw, so we've invested in 125 consumer companies directly over the years. And the reason consumer and tech companies. And when we set out to create M13, what we saw was that all these companies were all trying to solve for all the same things every single day, right? So even think about what you guys have done. You've learned it along the way, right? You guys had the unfair advantage in creating a sense of style and a brand and things like that. But then you have to figure out how to sell it directly to consumers on the internet, or how to get into retail, or who's the best resource for this. And so with M13, we set out to effectively create a holding company where we could institutionalize accelerating consumer brands at scale, because we think there's just kind of a new world we're living in, right? And the two things that we saw, the biggest thing is there's never been a bigger difference between doing something good, better, or best, right? The famous e-com stat is a 1% difference in 4 e-commerce stats is a 400% increase in sales. And then you might not know this, but Albert Einstein called the greatest invention of all time compounding, or compound interest. So compound 400% increase in sales over 6, 12, 18 months. You're talking the difference between the success you had and that streetwear brand down the street that no one's ever heard of, right? And so we saw that, and we basically created M13 to kind of take advantage of that, because we think we can kind of create infrastructure to allow people to kind of do everything in best in class using kind of a playbook approach of repeatable behaviors. And in the same ilk, we kind of created the book because a lot of the old adages your parents taught you or you read about in some famous kind of book don't exist anymore, or they don't hold true, right? So if we were launching a liquor company today, we would launch it totally different than if we had launched it, 10 years ago like we did.
And I think because, we're living in this danger world where people read about Uber, so they want to be the next Uber. We have a chapter in the book that's called Know Whether You're a Sailboat or a Speedboat.
Yeah.
And the chapter goes something like, obviously Uber is a speedboat, but not every business is meant to be. There's a lot of businesses. There's a company that I was on the board of called for 6 years called Kavita. It's now the biggest sparkling probiotic and one of the bigger kombucha brands out there. Got bought by Pepsi late last year. Incredibly successful company. But when they launched, they were very much ahead of the curve certainly on probiotics and gut health and all that, and to a degree even kombucha. And if they tried to be a speedboat out of the gate, they'd probably be dead in the water. They were ahead of their time. By being a sailboat and kind of waiting for their time and their gust of wind and doing other things, then they were able to put the sails down and be a speedboat, and then there's no turning back, aka scaling.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest difference, a very broad question, the biggest difference between launching a brand now and launching a brand 10 years ago?
For me, it's obvious. There's just the margin of error is so small now, right? And there's so much competition. There isn't a single idea that you've heard about or that we've heard about. We're like, oh my gosh, you're the first person to think about that.
Yeah.
It used to be maybe there was one other person. Now there's 10 people. The guy who lives under you in your apartment, he's probably working on the same thing. There's probably a guy in Indiana, New York, India, China, and South America, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have the ability to figure things out like you did in the old days. You have to figure out kind of how to hack these things so you can do kind of everything best in class, because you don't have that many mistakes before you're kind of out of business or out of capital.
What's the main separator between the two guys with the same idea, the one who succeeds and the one you never hear about?
I mean, certainly execution is a big part of it, and it's certainly the person. I mean, I would always take a pretty good idea and a killer team than what seems like a killer idea with a pretty good team. And it's a little bit of that Warren Buffett. I'd always rather invest in a great company at a fair price rather than a fair company at a great price. But I also think, when you ask about what's changed, for me, it's two things. One is, we've probably invested in, a half a dozen companies that have gone from scratch or inception to like $100 million of sales in 5 years. And obviously they have to be great brands, but so much of it is the way we go to market now. You can find your tribe easier. You can target and retarget and geo-target. And you can just do it in ways where if you have a great product and the virality is there, you can find your tribe and build something really big, really fast. Companies like Casper, the mattress company, or Honest Company, you couldn't have literally built those 10 years ago the same way because the technology wasn't there, and it is now. And I think the other thing that we've really tried to do with the book is that the things that were differentiators, like, starting a company has been democratized. The barrier entries have never been lower. But so it's obviously about other stuff because we live in this open source kind of world where it's not, it used to be you kind of squeeze and coddle your precious idea. Now it's like you almost have to share it and just try to do it better and more inclusively with that, because chances are you're not going to be able to do it in a dark room in a corner of some small state. And so because of that, we actually, part of the book, I think we're very transparent that part of the book is about some of our new ideas, which we believe really hold true. And part of it's just taking other people's best ideas and synthesizing them in a way that I don't think anyone has, because the information is all out there.
Yeah.
There's just a huge information asymmetry where it's out there, but people, our problem in society now is we're not good at culling through it, synthesizing, and then actually doing something with it. So that's what we've tried to really write here, is a playbook and a manual to shortcut your startup in a way that hopefully hasn't been presented before.
Yeah. That was really good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That was pretty official.
Yeah, I
Did
blacked
you
out. I
practice
blacked
that?
out what happened there. Yeah.
He was like Will Ferrell in Old School.
He just,
We gotta get
like,
him
what
back,
happened?
back up.
What was his name? Didn't he have a name? Frank the Tank, right?
Right.
Frank the Tank. Do you think this is like the start of a sort of journey for you guys of, you already do talks, right? At Harvard. Damn it, that's so cool. I mean, come on, you do talks at Harvard.
Yeah.
So
We
do you
were
think that
technically
it's,
visiting professors or something
Jesus
like that. Guest
Christ.
lecturers.
Can you imagine what that does with the ladies?
I
Well,
you
that's for another day over a beer.
Used to be at Goldman Sachs, built
Yeah.
and sold this little alcohol company. There it is on the bar.
Yes.
Anyway, and every now and then we go do some speeches at Harvard. Anyway,
You can find
my
some
house or
common
yours.
ground.
But neither of us are married, so either we're having a lot of fun or we have plenty of fatal flaws. We, by the way, looking at your bar over there, we need to get you a bottle of VEEV.
Yeah, you do.
I might even have one in the trunk ski.
Are you guys still like, you still have equity in it? Or you
No,
just,
we
it's
had a
part of
little
your soul?
earn out that's about to end, but
Congratulations.
as I always tell people, we had a little earn out, and then I kept the two most important things when you sell your company: access to a certain amount of free samples and an
Yes.
email address for life.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, that's good.
Because
That's
you
so
know, you
good.
never like. I still have my cell phone. It's the 646 New York one. It's like you never know when the one that got away called and said I made a huge mistake, or Ed McMahon calls with that big old check thing on TV.
You're smart, man. God damn it. So my question was going to be like, is this like are you going down this road of sharing information and sort of positioning yourselves a little bit more out front? Or
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the things that they say about manufacturing systems is like systems allow ordinary people to do extraordinary things. I think what we're trying to do, both with M13 and the book, is create infrastructure and educate people to allow good companies to become great companies, right? Because right now there's a lot of companies that even in this democratized world that honestly don't stand a chance because they don't have the knowledge or the access to certain things. And one of the things I think, I don't know if it's philanthropic, but I think it's kind of us paying it forward, is sharing all these insights we wish we had 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And again, using very granular examples. And we try to strike a balance between, we want someone to read the book and go, man, that made me think about a bunch of things, right? Just kind of get their mind spinning. And then we want them to read the book and go, oh, shoot, I got to go look that up because they talk specifically about what this company had done or this resource or things like that.
Yeah. That's just cool. I just love the topic. I wish maybe we should do another one when in February.
I thought
Just
you'd
talk
never
about
ask.
different chapters. Maybe we should do one every week. Man, we're cruising. This is fucking
We're
good.
so close.
We're on to
We're
something
so
here.
close to each other.
Yeah, I think we should do that because when I read it, for the listener, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I have this early. Can I keep this?
Yeah, you keep the
Fuck,
Cali
that's
copy.
cool. So I have this early copy, but usually I would read the book and we'd kind of go over each chapter. But I'm really excited. It's the topic that I love the most. I would say it kind of sounds like your guys' bit of personal mission statement is that, right? Teaching people how to make great businesses, whether you invest in them or not. Am I wrong?
No, that's
Okay.
exactly right.
I would say mine is exposing people to the realities of what it takes to be an achiever, because I think by doing that, you can open people's mind and they can achieve more, right? But very similar. And I just love the topic and we could go over it forever. Anything else I'm missing about the book? It comes out on January 16th. Was the process of actually getting a book done hard?
Everything about doing a book is really hard. Story for another time. We had kind of a great fortuitous meeting with a woman named Fat, who is one of the bigger literary agents in the country, and she actually just liked our project and liked us and said, I'm going to help you guys make this book.
Yeah.
So it has been, thanks to her and thanks to our publisher, Simon & Schuster, also Derek Jeter. This is actually the first book that Derek Jeter has financed in the entrepreneur space.
Really?
He's
When we-
getting behind athletes and entrepreneurs, and we're his first entrepreneur. So it has still been a labor of love. I have a whole new appreciation for when people say how hard writing a book is. Yet we've had, a great team and a lot of advantage, and it's still been really effing hard.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Carter?
Yeah, whenever I tell people that Derek Jeter's, that it's his imprint and Simon & Schuster, they're like, of course it is. You guys and Jeter are both like supermodels and are really good athletes. I'm not really sure we're on the same level as Derek, but I definitely appreciate that But when someone said that to me, they're like, it makes so much sense. I'm like, really? You're
I
really
have-
good at connecting the dots.
There it was. That's the big
I have
thing
not
we
heard
can-
one person say that to my
Really?
brother. Certainly
Yeah.
not to me, but I've not heard
It's
one
that
person
old
say that.
douchey Goldman
Yeah.
Sachs.
Yeah, exactly.
know,
You can only scrub so much of it off. It's still a little there, you know?
Damn it, I love it. Let me ask you just like two of these questions from my little ending. I know, fuck, we got to do it again because I
Yeah.
want to get into your like ritual routine, your
Yeah.
heavy breathing. Carter was talking before we started about your priming exercises and all your meditation and all that stuff. But I really want to get.
Let me
in-
ask you this, because funny enough, I didn't realize the person I'm supposed to actually talk to is he's actually the CEO of TuneIn.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. But I assume like if I punt him a couple minutes, it doesn't really do anything. So it's better just to come back, which we'd love to do, because like 10 minutes doesn't do a whole lot. Or you
Yeah,
wanna
no. We should
Okay,
come back.
we should come back,
Yeah,
okay.
100%.
Okay.
Let me ask you this one thing because you guys are the perfect person to ask it to. What advice would you, for my listeners, just so you know, I worked on some big ending questions here so I could sort of format my podcast a little bit better. What advice would you give a college student who just walked off the stage at his college graduation?
We've talked about it earlier, but honestly, like the most negative things I've heard about most people where I go, wow, I don't know if they can ever recover from that, is when someone says another person isn't curious. And to me, it's like, even the smartest people I know, they know a ton about very little. I mean, we all do, right? And so I think what I see more out of the young kids and like the early millennials is just sometimes I got it all figured out or just not that open-minded. And look, I'm pretty stubborn and whatever. We all like to be right, but like not at the expense of like learning.
Yeah.
And so I think it's about staying curious.
Yeah, and to me, obviously we're biased having worked at Goldman out of college, but to me, you got your whole life to go and do a startup and be entrepreneurial. I just think a lot of people are underestimating the foundation, right?
Yep.
So to me, if I had to do it all over again and I was graduating college tomorrow, I would go work somewhere, get the foundation while learning every single day, reading books like ours, listening to podcasts like yours, reading articles. Man, you will be the 25-year-old kids these days are smarter than than at least I was ever at 25. But I think it is a huge mistake in my mind to kind of skip that foundation because it's tough to get later.
Yeah, 100%. That's the problem I have. Can't go back to Harvard. Damn it.
No, don't. We talked about that. We're going to get you back.
There it is. We did it, man. Shortcut Your Startup, January 16th. Thank you guys for doing this, man. You guys are really fucking good. And we're going to be back to the listeners. I'm holding you to it on record. We're going to be back January, February to go through more of it and routines and
Awesome.
do it again.
Can't
Would
wait.
be honored.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
All right, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some good information in that one. These guys are really, really smart. And not only have they worked in investment banking, but then founding and exiting their own company and now investing in companies. I mean, they just have the full range of knowledge of how to start a company, how to raise money, how to invest. I'm fascinated by this area of business, and it was really nice to talk to them. And their book is great, and it's coming out in a month. So make sure you check it out. It's called Shortcut Your Startup. Check it out if you like this interview. Don't forget, keep sharing. Hit me up on Instagram. That's my social media platform of choice, @drama. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know who you'd like to see on it, what you would like to see more of, less of, or what you just love, maybe how it inspired you, how it changed your life. Please let me know. I'm always looking. Don't forget to leave me positive feedback on the iTunes store or the podcast app on your phone. Go to youngandreckless.com and use the promo code SSL to get 40% off all full-priced items. Subscribe to my newsletter, ynr.la/drama. That's where I'm giving updates on all books, health, documentaries, all the weird things that I'm into are the good recommendations that I have received throughout the week. I put them there. That's it, my friends. I appreciate it. And as always, I'll be back next week. Thank you.